Today we are doing a deep dive into the battery pack that lives inside the new updated Verge TS Pro. For those who don't know the history, Donut Lab was originally part of Verge Motorcycles.
That was January 5th. He said Q1 2026. Production bikes on the road by March 31st. It is now April. Q1 is over. And here is what actually happened. On March 31st, the literal last day of the deadline, Verge Motorcycles announced that one motorcycle rolled off their factory line in Estonia. One bike. Not delivered to a customer. Not tested by media. Not ridden by anyone outside the company. Just boxed up and photographed in a factory. No confirmed customer has received a Verge TS Pro with a Donut Lab battery. No independent journalist has ridden one. No teardown exists. The promised Southern Europe press test rides? Never happened. And the US market? Still waiting on EPA and CARB certification. The bike cannot even be legally registered on American roads. They promised a revolution by March 31st. They delivered a photo op, and the two claims that would actually change the battery industry, 400 watt-hours per kilogram and 100,000 cycles, are still completely unverified. After 4 independent test reports, nobody has weighed the cell. Nobody has tested a healthy cell's cycle life. And VTT, the lab running the tests, includes the same disclaimer in every single report. They do not even know what is inside it.
Donut Labs has a lot of hype in the battery world right now. But here's the catch. They're an electric motor company. So I sat down with Luke Workman over at Electric Goddess to figure out what's real and what's not.
The timeline collapse. Let's walk through exactly how this timeline fell apart. Because it did not collapse all at once. It eroded, one quiet revision at a time. January 5, CES. Donut Labs press release says their solid-state battery is ready for real-world use in the Verge Motorcycles bikes out on the road in Q1. Verge's own website lists Q1 2026 delivery. Their press materials say first deliveries in Q1 2026. The message is unambiguous. February 4. First crack. Verge CEO Tuomo Lehtimäki tells Finnish financial newspaper Kauppalehti that customer deliveries will start after the end of March for a selected group. The blanket Q1 guarantee quietly becomes a restricted late March window for early backers only. Meanwhile, new orders? Those get pushed to Q4 2026. Some regions get pushed into 2027. February 9. Damage control. 5 days later, Lehtimäki goes to Inside EVs to contain the fallout. He tells them first orders received last year will still start in Q1. But when anyone is ordering a bike now, that bike is landing at Q4 2026. He confirms total 2026 production is capped at 350 bikes. That is it. 350. For a company that promised major production volumes at CES 5 weeks earlier. Late February, the quiet edit. The Verge Motorcycles website changes. The delivery date field for the TS Pro Gen 2 is quietly altered from Q1 2026 to Q4 2026. No announcement, no press release, just a silent edit on the order page. The original CES promise is digitally erased for anyone who did not screenshot it. March 31, the deadline. The literal last day of Q1. Verge publishes a press release through the Pack News. It reads, the first production Verge TS Pro Gen 2 has left the factory in Estonia, boxed up and on its way to its first rider. One bike. Boxed on a factory floor. Not handed to a customer at an event. Not test-ridden by a journalist, not registered with any government. Just boxed and photographed. In the startup world, there is a name for this. It is called a milestone delivery. You technically hit the deadline by doing the minimum possible. One bike off the line. Checkbox ticked. But it is not what anyone was sold. April 1 to April 12. Silence. 0 verifiable instances of a retail customer taking delivery. 0 independent test rides. 0 registrations, 0 teardowns. The first production bikes are being kept internally for company test rides, and the US market is completely frozen. There are no EPA or CARB executive orders for any Verge motorcycle in the 2026 database. Without those, the bike cannot be legally sold, registered, or ridden on American roads. The claims scorecard.
In this series, we demonstrate the capabilities of Donut Battery, which is the world's first solid-state battery used in production vehicles.
Now let's talk about the technology itself. Because Donut Lab did not just promise fast delivery, they promised a battery that breaks the limits of what the entire industry thought was possible. Let's score those claims against the evidence. Claim 1. Fast charging. Full charge in 5 minutes. This one is actually partially confirmed. VTT tested the cell at 11C charge rate. That means a full charge in roughly 5.5 minutes. The cell accepted 286 amps without catching fire. At the pack level, an 18 kilowatt-hour pack sustained over 100 kilowatts for 5 minutes straight. That is legitimately impressive. Credit where it is due, fast charging works. Claim 2. Energy density, 400 watt-hours per kilogram. This is where everything falls apart. VTT tested the cell. They measured the voltage. They measured the capacity. They got about 26 amp hours at roughly 4 volts. That is approximately 104 watt-hours per cell. Now here is the math. To hit 400 watt-hours per kilogram, that cell can weigh no more than 260 grams. But VTT never weighed it. They were never asked to. However, SGS, a separate testing company, did weigh a cell from CT Coating, Donut Lab's upstream supply chain partner. That cell weighed 312.6 grams. Do the math. 104 watt-hours divided by 312.6 grams gives you somewhere between 268 and 291 watt-hours per kilogram. Now, 291 watt-hours per kilogram is genuinely excellent. It competes with the best commercial lithium-ion cells on the market. CATL Keelan packs hit about 255 at the pack level. Top-tier NMC pouch cells hover between 270 and 300 at the cell level. So the Donut Lab cell is a good battery. But it is not a 400 watt-hours per kilogram solid-state revolution. It is a very well-optimized lithium-ion cell performing exactly where you would expect a very well-optimized lithium-ion cell to perform. And the simplest test in the world, weighing the cell, has never been performed by the independent lab they hired to validate their claims. Weighing a battery takes 30 seconds. They have had 3 months. Claim 3, cycle life, 100,000 cycles. In the EV industry, 1,500 cycles is considered excellent. Tesla's cells are engineered for around 2,000 to 3,000. 100,000 cycles would defy every known degradation mechanism in modern battery materials. The only cycle life test VTT published was performed on a damaged pouch cell, a pouch cell that had lost its vacuum seal. They cycled it 50 times at a 5C rate. The result? The cell swelled by 17%. Capacity dropped by 55%. Energy efficiency fell from 89.6% to 83%. Donut Lab framed this as a safety test, proof that the cell fails gracefully without catching fire. Fine. But the obvious question is, where is the healthy cell data? Where is a pristine cell tested for even 500 cycles at a normal rate? It does not exist. As of April 2026, no independent lab has tested the cycle life of a healthy Donut Lab cell. Claim 4. Temperature range, -30 to 100 degrees Celsius. VTT tested the cell at 80 and 100 degrees Celsius. It survived multiple hours at 100 degrees, maintaining over 100% of its nominal capacity. That is genuinely impressive. Most lithium-ion cells would degrade severely at those temperatures. But the other half of the claim, sub-zero testing, has never been performed. No data exists for -30 degrees. Claim 5. Chemistry, all solid state, no lithium. This is the one that makes battery scientists lose sleep. Every VTT test report contains the same legal disclaimer: the customer identified the device as a solid-state battery cell. VTT did not independently verify this aspect. The lab testing their battery does not know what is inside it. VTT was hired to measure electrical outputs, voltage, current, temperature. They were not hired to open the cell, run mass spectrometry, or perform X-ray diffraction to check for liquid electrolytes or lithium. They verified performance. They explicitly declined to verify chemistry. Meanwhile, independent battery engineers who analyzed the VTT voltage data, the discharge curve, internal resistance, the DCIR signature, concluded that the cell behaves electrochemically like a conventional lithium-ion battery with a standard polymer electrolyte. Not a lithium-free solid-state paradigm. A well-made lithium-ion cell.
Matthew, do you like donuts?
I love donuts.
In the form of a motor? Apparently that's a motor.
That is a motor?
Yeah. That's a motor. They take that motor, and maybe that one, and then they put it into a motorcycle like this.
The financial red flags. Now here is the part that changes the picture entirely. Because missing a deadline is one thing. Missing a deadline when your company is hemorrhaging money is something else. Donut Lab was founded in August 2024. That is less than 20 months ago. In that time, they claim to have developed, prototyped, validated, and scaled a battery technology that Toyota, Samsung, and CATL, companies with billions in R&D budgets and decades of electrochemistry experience, are still targeting for 2027. Now let's look at the finances of the company actually building the bikes. Verge Motorcycles reported a net loss of 9 million euros in 2023. In 2024, that loss widened to 10.7 million euros. That is nearly 20 million euros burned in 2 years, set against revenue of just 100,000 euros in 2023 and 1 million euros in 2024. But the losses are not even the worst part. PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, one of the Big Four auditing firms, was hired to review Verge's 2024 financial reports for its Estonian manufacturing subsidiary. And PwC did something that should concern every single person watching this video. They refused to issue an audit opinion. Let me explain what that means. There are 4 types of audit opinions. An unqualified opinion means everything checks out. A qualified opinion means there are issues, but the financials are mostly fair. An adverse opinion means the financials are materially wrong. And a disclaimer of opinion, which is what PwC issued, means the auditor could not get enough evidence to form any opinion at all. It is the most severe outcome in professional auditing. It means the books are so incomplete that PwC literally could not tell what was real. Specifically, PwC reported they could not verify inventory management data, sales receipts, research expenditure, or property values. They flagged 2.4 million euros in reported inventory that simply could not be confirmed. Why? Because Verge allegedly does not have a functional inventory management system. Think about that for a second. A company that claims it is about to scale to 1 bike per day does not have a system to track what is in its own warehouse. PwC also found that the Estonian subsidiary holds zero cash. It depends entirely on loans from the Finnish parent company, from management, and from their relatives. The auditor flagged a going concern risk, a formal warning that the company may not survive the next 12 months. And here is the detail that should make your ears ring. There are widespread reports from Finnish investment communities that Donut Lab and Verge have been approaching small, independent retail investors with high-pressure pitches promising 5-fold or 10-fold returns in 18 months. Companies sitting on verified, globally disruptive battery technology do not need to solicit high-interest microloans from retail investors. They get courted by Toyota, by Volkswagen, by sovereign wealth funds. The fact that institutional capital is nowhere near this deal tells you everything the sales pitch will not. What the rest of the industry is actually doing. While Donut Lab was photographing one motorcycle in a factory, here is what the rest of the solid-state battery industry was doing. Factorial Energy validated 375 watt-hours per kilogram cells with Stellantis. They are operating a 200 megawatt-hour manufacturing line in Massachusetts. Their chemistry is fully patented and publicly disclosed. ION Storage Systems became the first US company to achieve customer qualification for a solid-state cell. Their anodless ceramic design is funded by ARPAE and heavily audited by the US government. QuantumScape inaugurated their Eagle line for pilot production. They shipped functional cells to Volkswagen and Ducati for real-world integration testing. Their lithium metal ceramic separator chemistry is fully public. Samsung SDI showcased pouch-type all-solid-state batteries at Interbattery 2026, targeting mass production in the second half of 2027. Chemistry published: sulfide-based electrolytes. CATL and BYD, the two companies that together control over half the global EV battery market, are still targeting 2027 to 2030 for mass commercialization. These companies have virtually unlimited R&D budgets. And they are saying it is still years away. Every single company on that list has published their chemistry. Every one. Factorial published it. ION published it. QuantumScape published it. Samsung published it. CATL published it. Donut Lab has published nothing. No patents. No papers. No chemical formulas. Not even a diagram of what is inside the cell. A comprehensive search of the US Patent Office, the European Patent Office, WIPO, and Finland's own patent database turns up 0 filings from Donut Lab related to battery chemistry. What does exist is a trail of corporate licensing agreements pointing upstream to an entity called CT Coating and a technology called nano-paste screen printing, developed through the Nordic Nano group. Donut Lab appears to be a commercial integrator, wrapping an externally sourced cell in aggressive marketing while protecting the actual chemistry behind NDA. That is not necessarily wrong. Plenty of companies license technology. But it is a far cry from the CES narrative of a Finnish startup that single-handedly solved the biggest problem in battery science. The pattern. So let's connect the dots, because individually, each of these things might have an explanation. But together, they form a pattern that is hard to ignore. Donut Lab was founded in August 2024, less than 2 years ago. They claim to have solved every major problem in battery science simultaneously: energy density, cycle life, charging speed, thermal stability, and cost, all at once using a chemistry they refuse to disclose. They showed mock-ups at CES, not working demos. Shirley Meng, one of the world's top battery scientists from the University of Chicago, visited their booth and told MIT Technology Review they had 0 demo, so I don't believe it. Yang Hongchen, CEO of Sfolt, reviewed their specs and said all the parameters are contradictory. They promised Q1 delivery. Delivery narrowed to late March for a selected group. Then the website changed to Q4. Then the deadline was met by boxing a single motorcycle on March 31st. The first production bikes are not going to customers. They are staying with the company for internal test rides. From founding through February 2026, Verge had delivered under 100 motorcycles total. Production for all of 2026 is capped at 350. That is not a company scaling to mass production. That is a company making 1 bike a day if everything goes perfectly. The auditor refused to sign off on their financials. They are burning over 10 million euros a year with almost no revenue. The Estonian subsidiary has 0 cash. And they have been approaching small individual investors promising 10-fold returns. After 4 independent test reports, the 2 claims that would change everything, energy density and healthy cycle life, remain completely untested. The lab they hired includes a disclaimer in every report saying they do not know what is inside the cell. And the SGS weight data from their own supply chain suggests the energy density is about 100 watt-hours per kilogram lower than advertised. Now, I want to be very clear. I am not saying this is fraud. I don't have access to their labs. I haven't opened the cell. I don't know what the final product will look like when it ships. What I am saying is that the pattern, extraordinary claims, selective evidence, shifting deadlines, financial distress, undisclosed chemistry, 0 patents, and aggressive retail investor outreach is exactly the pattern that should make you ask harder questions, not fewer. So here is where we stand. Donut Lab said Q1. Q1 is over. 1 bike left a factory. No customer has confirmed receiving one. No journalist has ridden one. No one has weighed the battery. The bike cannot even be registered in the United States. And the clock is now ticking on April and May deliveries. If those do not happen either, this becomes a very different conversation. There are 2 possible outcomes. 1. Donut Lab starts delivering bikes in the next few weeks. Customers start posting real-world data. Someone weighs the cell. Someone runs 500 cycles on a healthy unit. And the skeptics, including me, have to eat our words. If that happens, I will make that video, gladly. 2. The deliveries keep slipping. The claims stay unverified. The investor outreach gets more aggressive. And this becomes the most expensive CES presentation in battery history. Either way, we will be watching. And the moment the first customer gets their hands on one of these bikes and puts the battery on a scale, we will be the first to tell you what they found. Subscribe and hit the bell. The next video in this series breaks down the voltage curve evidence that has battery engineers asking whether this is really a solid-state cell or just a lithium-ion battery with a very expensive marketing campaign. Drop your prediction in the comments. Will Donut Lab deliver a single verified customer bike this month? I want to see what you think.